Vivian Reed clutched her coffee cup tighter as she stared at the imposing glass building that housed Davidson Architectural Design. Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself that this was just a 6-month temporary position, an office manager role to pay the bills while she figured out her next move after being laid off from her previous job. Little did she know that pushing through those revolving doors would completely change the trajectory of her life. The receptionist, a friendly woman named Melissa, greeted her warmly. "You must be Vivian. We've been desperate for someone to bring order to this chaos. Let me show you to your desk, and then I'll introduce you to the team. Mr. Davidson is away on business for the next couple of weeks, so you'll have time to settle in before meeting him." Vivian nodded, following Melissa through the open plan office. The space was beautiful high ceilings, modern furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the city. But the beauty was marred by obvious disorganization. Stacks of papers everywhere, overflowing inboxes, and a whiteboard covered in scribbles that made no sense. "The last office manager left rather abruptly," Melissa explained with a grimace. "Things have fallen apart since then. We're all good at designing buildings, but terrible at managing paperwork." Vivian set her bag down at the large desk situated just outside what she assumed was the CEO's office. "Well, organization happens to be my specialty. I'll have this sorted out in no time." By the end of her first week, Vivian had implemented a new filing system, created a digital calendar that synced with everyone's devices, and cleared the backlog of invoices that had been piling up. The staff treated her like a miracle worker, bringing her coffee and pastries as tokens of appreciation. On Monday morning of her second week, Vivian arrived early as usual. The office was empty and peaceful, giving her time to plan her day. She was so absorbed in her task list that she didn't notice someone had entered until a deep voice spoke. "You must be the temporary savior I've been hearing about." Vivian nearly jumped out of her skin. Standing before her was a tall man with dark hair and striking blue eyes. He wore jeans and a casual button-up shirt, definitely not the stuffy business attire she'd expected from a boss. "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you come in," she stammered, standing quickly. "I'm Vivian Reed, the temporary office manager, and you are—" A look of amusement crossed his face. "Ryan Davidson, I own the place." Vivian felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She'd assumed he would be older, perhaps wearing an expensive suit, not looking like he'd just stepped off a movie set. "Mr. Davidson, I thought you weren't due back for another week." "Plans changed," he said, shifting a duffel bag on his shoulder. "And it's Ryan, please. Mr. Davidson makes me feel like my father." He glanced around at the transformed office space. "I see you've been busy." Melissa wasn't exaggerating when she said you were a miracle worker. "I just like things to be efficient," Vivian replied, trying to regain her professional composure. "Well, efficiency is something we've been sorely lacking." Ryan checked his watch. "I need to get settled, just got off a red-eye from Tokyo, but I'd like to hear about all the changes you've made." "Lunch tomorrow?" Vivian nodded, surprised by the casual invitation. "Sure, I can prepare a summary of what I've done so far and my plans for the next few months." "Perfect," he smiled, and Vivian felt something flutter in her chest, looking forward to it. As Ryan disappeared into his office, Vivian sank back into her chair. She hadn't expected her boss to be so young or so attractive. She quickly pushed the thought aside. This was a temporary job, and developing a crush on her boss would be completely unprofessional. The next day, Vivian prepared meticulously for their lunch meeting, bringing her tablet with detailed notes about her organizational systems. She expected they'd eat in the conference room or perhaps at her desk. Instead, Ryan suggested they walk to a small bistro 2 blocks away. "I've been cooped up in planes and offices for too long," he explained as they stepped out into the sunlight. "Besides, the food here is excellent." Over lunch, Vivian outlined all the changes she'd implemented. Ryan listened attentively, asking insightful questions and nodding in approval at her ideas. She'd expected a typical boss, detached, perhaps a little arrogant, but Ryan was engaged and genuinely seemed to value her input. "You know," he said as they finished their meal, I've hired 3 office managers in the past 2 years, and none of them understood what we needed the way you do." "I'm glad I could help," Vivian replied, feeling a surge of pride. "Though I'm only here temporarily, my contract is for 6 months." Something flickered in Ryan's eyes, but he just nodded. "Well, we're lucky to have you for however long that is." As they walked back to the office, Ryan asked about her background. Vivian explained how she'd worked for a publishing company that had downsized, and how she was using this temporary position to reassess her career goals. "What about you?" she asked. "How did you get started in architectural design?" Ryan smiled, but there was a hint of reserve in his expression. "It's a family business, in a way. My father was in construction. I studied architecture and started this firm about 8 years ago." Vivian wanted to ask more, but they had reached the office, and Ryan was immediately pulled into a meeting with clients. As he walked away, Vivian couldn't help but feel there was more to his story than he was letting on. Over the next few weeks, Vivian and Ryan fell into a comfortable routine. They would meet briefly each morning to discuss the day's priorities, and often had lunch together when Ryan wasn't with clients. Vivian found herself looking forward to these meetings more than she cared to admit. What surprised her most was Ryan's hands-on approach to his business. He knew all 15 employees by name and seemed genuinely interested in their lives. He worked alongside his design team rather than simply delegating, and often stayed later than anyone else. One evening, Vivian was working late to finish a particularly complex proposal when she noticed the light still on in Ryan's office. She knocked softly on his door. "You're still here?" Ryan looked up, surprise evident on his face. "It's nearly 9. "I could say the same to you," Vivian replied. "I just finished the Henderson proposal. I thought I'd leave it on your desk for review tomorrow." Ryan gestured for her to come in. "Let's look at it now, since we're both here." As they reviewed the proposal together, sitting side by side at his desk, Vivian became acutely aware of his proximity. The faint scent of his cologne, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the occasional brush of his arm against hers, all of it was distracting in a way that made her pulse quicken. "This looks perfect," Ryan said finally, leaning back in his chair. "You have a real talent for this, Vivian." "Thank you," she said, gathering the papers. "But it's getting late. I should head home." "Let me drive you," Ryan offered, already reaching for his jacket. "Oh, that's not necessary. I can catch the bus." "At this hour, no way, I'm driving you." Too tired to argue, Vivian accepted his offer. She expected him to have some flashy sports car, but instead, Ryan led her to a modest sedan. "Not what you expected?" he asked, noticing her surprise. "I just thought, as the owner of a successful firm." Ryan shrugged as he opened the passenger door for her. "It gets me where I need to go." During the drive to her apartment, Vivian found herself relaxing, sharing stories about her childhood in a small coastal town. Ryan was an attentive listener, asking questions that showed genuine interest. "This is me," Vivian said when they reached her building, a modest apartment complex in a middle-class neighborhood. "Thanks for the ride." "Anytime," Ryan replied, his eyes lingering on hers for a moment longer than necessary. "See you tomorrow, Vivian." As she watched him drive away, Vivian tried to ignore the warmth spreading through her chest. It was just a ride home, she told herself. Nothing more. But deep down, she knew her feelings for Ryan were becoming something she couldn't easily dismiss. The next morning, Vivian arrived at the office to find a small box on her desk with a note. "For staying late, your dedication doesn't go unnoticed. R." Inside was a gift card to her favorite coffee shop, the one she stopped at every morning, he'd noticed. Melissa appeared at her desk, eyebrows raised suggestively. Well, seems the boss has taken a special interest in our temporary office manager." Vivian felt her cheeks grow warm. "It's just to thank you for working late on the Henderson proposal." Melissa hummed skeptically. "You know, in the 5 years I've worked here, I've never seen Ryan Davidson give an employee a personal gift or offer them rides home." "You heard about that? Honey, it's a small office. Everyone knows everything." Melissa leaned in closer. "And what everyone's wondering is whether our normally reserved boss has finally met someone who cracks that professional shell of his." "We just work well together," Vivian insisted, though her racing heart suggested otherwise. If you say so, Melissa replied with a knowing smile. But just so you know, he's one of the good ones. Completely self-made, donates to charity, treats everyone with respect. There aren't many like him out there. Before Vivian could respond, Ryan emerged from his office, greeting them both with a smile that made Vivian's heart flip. Morning, ladies. Ready for the client meeting at 10. The day proceeded normally, but Vivian couldn't help noticing the small glances Ryan sent her way during meetings, or how he seemed to find reasons to stop by her desk more often than usual. And despite her best efforts to maintain professionalism, she found herself looking forward to these brief interactions. As weeks turned into months, Vivian became an indispensable part of Davidson architectural design. She knew the business inside and out, had developed relationships with clients, and had streamlined operations to the point where the company was more profitable than ever. What had started as a temporary job had become something she couldn't imagine leaving, and then there was Ryan. Their professional relationship had evolved into a friendship marked by inside jokes, shared lunches, and a deep mutual respect. But lately, Vivian had caught herself wondering if there might be something more, a lingering touch, a look that held too long. The way he always seemed to brighten when she entered a room, 3 months into her 6-month contract, everything changed. Vivian was working late again when she heard raised voices coming from Ryan's office. The door was slightly ajar, and she couldn't help overhearing the heated conversation. "Dad, I've told you 1,000 times, I'm not interested in selling," Ryan said firmly. "You're being stubborn," replied an older man's voice. "Davidson Construction is offering you 3 times what this little firm is worth. It's good business sense. This little firm is doing just fine, and I built it from nothing without your help, I might add. I'm not selling to you or anyone else. You're sitting on a gold mine, Ryan. With your designs and my resources, we could dominate the market. Stop letting your pride get in the way." "It's not pride, it's principle. You made it clear 8 years ago that I'd never amount to anything without your money backing me. Well, I've built this company my way, and I intend to keep it that way." Vivian backed away from the door, not wanting to eavesdrop further. But as she returned to her desk, her mind raced with questions. Ryan had implied his company was a family business, but this conversation suggested a very different story. A few minutes later, an older man stormed out of Ryan's office. He paused briefly at Vivian's desk, his eyes sweeping over her with cold assessment before he continued toward the exit. Ryan appeared in his doorway, looking drained. "Vivian, could you come in for a minute?" She followed him into his office, noticing the tension in his shoulders as he closed the door behind them. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," he said, running a hand through his hair. "That was my father, Richard Davidson of Davidson Construction." The name registered immediately. Davidson Construction was one of the largest development companies on the East Coast, known for luxury high-rises and commercial complexes. Everyone in the industry knew the name. "I didn't realize." Vivian began, uncertain how to continue. Ryan sighed, gesturing for her to sit. "I don't exactly advertise the connection. My father and I have a complicated relationship." "You don't have to explain," Vivian assured him. "Actually, I think I do." Ryan sat across from her, his blue eyes meeting hers directly. "I've been less than forthcoming about my background, and you deserve the truth." Over the next hour, Ryan revealed his history, how he'd rejected his father's wealth and connections to build his own company from scratch, how he'd started with just himself and one draftsman in a tiny rented space, how he'd earned his first clients through talent and determination rather than his family name, and how his father had been trying to buy him out for years, seeing Ryan's success as validation that he should join the family empire. "So you're actually—" Vivian hesitated. "A trust fund kid who walked away from it all," Ryan smiled ruefully. "Yes and no. I used my inheritance from my mother to start this company, but I've never touched a penny of my father's money. Everything else, this office, our client list, our reputation, we've built that together as a team." "Why tell me this now?" Ryan's expression softened. Because I value your opinion, Vivian, more than I probably should, and because—" He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "Because I'm hoping you might consider staying on permanently when your contract ends." Vivian felt her heart skip. "You want me to stay?" "The company needs you," Ryan said, then added more quietly, "I need you." The weight of his words hung between them, filled with implications neither of them was ready to voice. But for the first time, Vivian allowed herself to consider that her feelings for Ryan might not be one-sided. "I'll think about it," she promised, though in her heart, she already knew her answer. The next day, Vivian was surprised when Ryan asked if she would accompany him to a charity gala that weekend. "It's for the Children's Hospital Building Fund," he explained. "As a major donor, I'm expected to attend, and these events are always more bearable with good company." "As your employee." Vivian clarified, wanting to understand exactly what he was asking. Ryan held her gaze. "As my friend, Vivian, but if you're uncomfortable—" "No," she interrupted. "I'd love to go." Saturday evening found Vivian nervously preparing for the gala. She'd splurged on a new dress, a deep emerald silk that complemented her auburn hair. As she applied her makeup, she tried to remind herself this wasn't a date, but when Ryan arrived to pick her up, the appreciative look in his eyes made her pulse race. "You look stunning," he said simply. "Thank you," she replied, taking in his tailored tuxedo. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The gala was held at the city's most prestigious hotel, and as they entered the ballroom, Vivian couldn't help feeling out of place among the wealthy elite. But Ryan stayed close, his hand occasionally resting lightly on the small of her back as he introduced her to various associates. "Ryan Davidson," a booming voice called out. They turned to see Ryan's father approaching, a much younger woman on his arm. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I donate to the hospital every year, Dad," Ryan replied coolly. "You know that." Richard Davidson's gaze shifted to Vivian. "And who's this lovely creature?" "This is Vivian Reed, our office manager," Ryan said, a protective edge to his voice. "Vivian, my father, Richard Davidson." "Pleasure," Richard said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "An office manager, you always did prefer to surround yourself with ordinary people." Vivian felt Ryan tense beside her. "Actually," she interjected smoothly, "I find there's nothing ordinary about your son or his company. What he's built is quite extraordinary." Richard's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, Ryan guided Vivian away. "I'm sorry about that," he murmured once they were out of earshot. "Don't be," Vivian replied. "Your father clearly doesn't know you very well if he thinks anything about you is ordinary." Ryan's expression softened as he looked at her. "Dance with me." On the dance floor, with Ryan's hand warm against her waist, Vivian felt as though they were in their own private world. They moved together easily, as if they'd been dancing for years rather than minutes. "Thank you for coming tonight," Ryan said, his voice low. "Having you here means more than you know." "Why did you really ask me to come, Ryan?" Vivian found the courage to ask. "Was it really just as a friend?" Ryan's steps faltered slightly, then steadied. "No," he admitted, "not just as a friend, but I shouldn't have you work for me, and I don't want you to feel pressured in any way." "I don't feel pressured," she assured him. "I feel—" She searched for the right word. "You see me, Ryan. Not just what I do for your company, but me." The music slowed, and Ryan drew her closer. "I've been seeing you since the day you walked into my office, Vivian. I just didn't know what to do about it." The rest of the evening passed in a pleasant blur. They danced, they talked, they shared quiet laughs at the extravagance around them, and when Ryan drove her home, the air between them was charged with possibility. At her door, Ryan hesitated. "I should go," he said, though he made no move to leave. "Or you could come in for coffee," Vivian suggested, surprising herself with her boldness. Inside her apartment, any pretense of coffee was quickly forgotten as Ryan's hands cradled her face, his eyes searching hers for permission. When she nodded, his lips met hers in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened with months of pent-up longing. "I've wanted to do that since the day we met," Ryan confessed when they finally parted, both breathless. "Why didn't you?" Vivian asked, her hands still resting on his chest. "Because you were my employee. Because I was afraid you'd think I was just another rich guy abusing his position. Because—" He took a deep breath, Because you matter too much to me to risk getting it wrong. Vivian smiled, standing on tiptoes to kiss him again. For a successful businessman, you overthink things. They stayed up talking until dawn, sharing stories and secrets they'd held back during their months of working together. Ryan told her about growing up with the pressure of the Davidson name, about his mother's death when he was in college, about his determination to forge his own path. Vivian shared her dreams of eventually going back to school, her close relationship with her sister, her parents' divorce that had left her wary of commitment. As sunlight began to filter through the blinds, Ryan reluctantly said he should go. We have a lot to figure out, he acknowledged as they stood at her door. Like what happens when my contract ends in 2 months, Vivian asked. Like what happens now, Ryan corrected. I want to be with you, Vivian, but I don't want to complicate your work life. We can keep things professional at the office if that's what you want. Vivian considered this. I think I need to find a new job, not because I don't love working with you, but because I want to be with you without any power imbalance between us. Ryan nodded, understanding in his eyes. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Just promise me one thing. What's that? Don't walk away completely. I've spent my whole life proving I could do everything on my own, but these past few months with you have shown me how much better life can be when you share it with the right person. The next 2 months were a delicate balancing act. At work, they maintained a professional relationship, though their colleagues weren't fooled by their attempt at discretion. Outside the office, they explored their budding relationship, learning each other's habits and preferences, meeting friends and, in Vivian's case, family. Ryan was an attentive partner, surprising her with thoughtful gestures, cooking her dinner after a long day, remembering her favorite flowers, listening intently when she talked about her dreams. For someone who had grown up with wealth and privilege, he was remarkably grounded, valuing experiences over material things. As her contract neared its end, Vivian secured a position as an operations director at a non-profit organization dedicated to providing housing for low-income families. The work aligned with her values, offered a significant promotion, and removed any conflict of interest with her relationship with Ryan. On her last day at Davidson Architectural Design, the staff threw her a farewell party with cake and champagne. There were heartfelt speeches and a few tears, especially from Melissa, who had become a close friend. You know, Melissa whispered as they hugged goodbye, we all had a betting pool on how long it would take you two to figure out you were perfect for each other. I won, by the way. Vivian laughed, wiping away a tear. Was it that obvious? From day one, Melissa confirmed with a grin. After everyone had left, Ryan locked the office door and took Vivian's hand. I have something to show you. He led her to the roof of the building, where he had set up a small table with candles and a bottle of champagne. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling in the dusk. What's this? Vivian asked, touched by the gesture. I wanted to mark the occasion properly, Ryan replied, pulling out her chair. The end of one chapter and the beginning of another. They toasted to new beginnings, and as they sipped their champagne, Ryan reached into his pocket. I have something for you, he said, sliding a small box across the table. It's not what you think, he added quickly as her eyes widened. At least not yet, I know we're just starting out. Vivian opened the box to find a delicate silver key on a chain. A key to my house, Ryan explained. I want you to feel welcome there anytime. No pressure to move in or make any decisions yet, just a door that's always open to you. Tears welled in Vivian's eyes as she lifted the necklace. It's perfect. Thank you. Ryan moved to her side, fastening the necklace around her neck. I know it's only been a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, Vivian Reed. I love you too, she whispered, the words coming easily now that they were free to express them openly. 1 year later, Vivian stood on that same rooftop, now transformed with strings of lights and flowers for a very different occasion. She watched as their friends and family filled the space, all gathered to witness a moment that had felt inevitable from the day she walked into Davidson Architectural Design. Nervous? Her sister asked, adjusting the simple lace veil in Vivian's hair. Not at all, Vivian replied honestly. And it was true. In the past year, she and Ryan had built a relationship based on mutual respect, open communication, and a love that had only deepened with time. Ryan had proposed 6 months earlier, on a weekend trip to the coastal town where Vivian had grown up. He'd arranged a private dinner on the beach, gotten down on one knee in the sand, and promised to spend the rest of his life proving that fate knew what it was doing when it sent her to his office that day. Now, as the music began and Vivian walked toward Ryan, she remembered that first morning how anxious she'd been, how she'd seen the job as merely a stepping stone to something else. She hadn't known then that the something else would be the love of her life. Ryan's eyes never left hers as she approached, his smile reflecting all the love and promise of their future together. "You look beautiful," he whispered as she reached him. "You look happy," she whispered back. "I am," he confirmed. "Happier than I ever thought possible." As they exchanged their vows, surrounded by those they loved, Vivian marveled at how life's unexpected turns often led to the most beautiful destinations. She had started as a temporary office manager, not knowing the boss was a millionaire managing his heart. Now she was his partner in every sense of the word, facing whatever the future held together. And that, she knew, was worth more than all the millions in the world.